Welcome to the first episode of Restorations. I'm Eric, your chief restorer, and this show is about restoring old and antique furniture that you may think needs to be thrown away, but around here, we don't toss it, we restore it. Today, we're going to be working on this bar, and at a closer look, it's going to need a lot of love and tender care. So let's take a closer look. All right. Now, as you can see, someone decided to put paneling on this, which is a no-no. I don't understand why anybody would put paneling on a bar, but we're going to take that off. That's going to go bye-bye. And if you look down, we're looking at the footer. Somebody attempted to do a good molding job. They failed. So we're going to remove all of that. And as you can see right over here in this corner, they did a bad job joining the system. That should be one continuous piece. And that's what we're going to do. As you can see right here on the top, somebody decided to put linoleum on the top of this bar, and then using weather stripping as the backstop to make sure that the drinks don't fall off. Okay, I'm hoping that there's a great piece of wood under this linoleum and we can make it pop and we can make it sing. And as we take a look around back, we can also see someone did the same thing on the lower shelves, and there are two types of linoleum on here. We also look here, and I am not sure why anybody didn't use fascia board because that's ugly lime green, which we will cover that with fascia board. And then we'll strip all this nice woodwork around here and pull it out, and then we'll give it a brand new beautiful stain. So with all that said, it's about demolition time. All right, we're back, and normally I wouldn't stop in the middle of demolition to show this type of video, but this is the type of thing that you would find when you are dealing with somebody who's done some shoddy craftsmanship. My hope that was under the layment, and the board under the layment was be a solid board that we could refinish. But as you can see, this is particle board, thin particle board. And they actually double layered it, and the top layer has a color on top of it. So this whole thing is going to have to be completely ripped off, and then an additional board has to be added. So don't know if the client's going to be happy about that, but we'll see. All right, we're back, and as you can see, I have completely stripped this bar down to the bare frame. I thought I could save the molding on this bar, but come to find out that that's molding that you use to frame out a floor. Now, I have no idea why this was on a bar, but it had to go. And so then we start seeing some structural issues. So a little shaky wood here. This wood is longer here. It's not actually even. They were using that molding to cover up some imperfections. So what we're going to have to do is go back here, shore up all the framing, cut anything down to where it's flush, and do a good sand job on the back to get rid of this extra paint that's on here, because it's not stained, it's paint. And we'll be ready to frame this out in the back. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay this down on a complete board, and then we're going to just mark this entire frame out, and then we're going to cut that frame out of the board, and then we're just going to lay that whole piece on the back of this, so that it'll be one complete piece for the back of the bar. So it's going to come out, it's going to look nice. Now let's go to the front. All right, now we're looking at the front of the bar, and can you see what is a problem with some of these posts here on the top of the bar? Can you see it? Can you see it? Oh, I'm singing in the rain. Just singing in the rain. They literally had this bar being supported by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individual posts, and then the rest of the bar piece just swinging in the rain. I have no idea why they didn't continue this piece here all the way from one end to the other, but we'll be doing that. We're going to be replacing that whole piece, so we'll have a good solid structure all the way across for the bar top. And as you can see, we had to strip everything down. So once we do that, we're going to give this whole bar a good sanding, and then we're going to cut all the pieces just like we said for the back, we're going to cut all the pieces for the front, the sides, and the base, and then we're going to put this bad boy back together. So, we about to have some fun. Stay tuned. All right. Now, as you see, we got the board cut. We got it clamped on with our clamps. I went on and drilled holes for the screws so that we can get a good adhesion and not crack the outer wood, because we do not want to go through replacing all these boards. Now, we're going to be using 1 1/4 inch deck make screws. Now, I know you're saying deck make screws. Yeah, well, I want this to be strong, and I just don't want to put any ordinary wood screw in there with it. So we're going to use some of these screws here to make sure we get a little extra strength. All right, and there we go. Now we're gonna, I think we could have used 2 inches, but then that would have been long, and I would have been back there with my Dremel tool shaving the edges off so nobody would get cut with it. And see how these screws they make themselves flush, so you don't have to worry about them actually sticking out or anything like that. There we go. And we get about 3 more here, and we'll be good to go. Okay. That clamp on. One more. Uh-oh. Well, that's why you have extra. Look, Mom, I'm drilling lefty. Uh-uh. All right. Now, we're going to do the same thing for the tops. Well, I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm going to screw them in on the top, and this bad boy will be ready to go. So, check in a minute. All right, we're back, and we've done all the structural work that needs to be done to this, and now it's ready to do a light sanding. But before we start the sanding piece, I wanted to go over a few things. If you're not in a well ventilated area, or you don't have a ventilated system in your shop, you need to make sure that you have the proper equipment to keep that sawdust and those sandy particles out of your lungs, and also not to have it floating around in your shop. So you definitely need a dust mask, and in this day and age in COVID, everybody should have one of those right now. Also, you need to have good ventilation. So as I turn, I go over here on my shop wall. I'll have my fan running. That's to blow air out of the shop, and I have my shop door open, which I'll show you in a second, so that the air can actually blow out of my shop. As well as I also have a ventilation system here. You just saw the TV because I gotta watch my golf. Ventilation system here, so that I can filter this air that's actually in the shop. Because even though you have the shop door open and air circulation going, sometimes those particles just like to stay in the air. So this helps suck it out of the air and make sure that you're not bringing those particles in. And of course, like I said, there's my shop door, which is wide open. I need to get that trash up right there. Also, so what I'm using here today is my orbital sander, excuse me, and I'm using 80 grit sandpaper. The purpose of using the 80 grit is to make sure I get off the paint areas, as well as level off any areas on the bar that may be a little bit out of line or not exactly level. So it's kind of like planing it without actually taking it apart. And then, so once we finish that, then we're going to go on ahead and start applying the new fascia pieces to this bar, and get it completed, get it sanded, get it stained, and get it to our client. So I'm not going to bore you with all the sanding, but when we come back, it's going to be a whole little different look. So check you in a minute. All right. Well, we went and spent a little time at Home Depot, and we got the board to do the covering for the bar. And as you can see, I hope you can see, that we have already etched out the back side of the bar right here on the board. We're going to use our circular saw. We're going to cut all these pieces out. And then we're going to go on about cutting all the bar front, the sides, the bar top, the shelves, get all that cut out, and then we're going to start putting the bar back together. So let's have some fun. And there you go. Now that's the first hole. We're not going to go in and bore you with all the rest of them, but you get the idea. We're going to go ahead and cut all these out, and then get it ready to mount on the back of this bar. So check in when all the fun is over. All right, now we got the frame cut out there. All right, so all we gotta do is mount that to the back of the board, do a little light sanding to get some of the little waves and nicks out of it. Once we put the molding around it, and it's gonna be perfect. So now we're going on to the shelves, then we're gonna do the front and the sides, then we're gonna start putting this bar back together. So check you later.
Star shone over the Rhone River for centuries. But once Vincent van Gogh the players, the reigning champion is Rory McIlroy, and we'll conclude our stay in the Sunshine State, West Palm Beach, for another Honda Classic before heading across the Gulf to Texas. First of all, it's a college match play, another WGC before finishing things out in San Antonio with 40 cars. Another Kraken, double arrow. Westwood now 14 at the tough par 3. To a screeching halt, so feet for
shelf.
Corey Connor.
All right, welcome back. I wanted to stop and show you the progress of where we are on the bar. As you can see, we got the shelving in on the second level as well on the third level. As you can see, we took that shelf all the way to the end, unlike it was when we first got the bar. And that's going to add extra shelving, extra storage space. Even though this area is going to be covered, it's still going to give you the storage space on both sides. Also, as you can see, we put a fascia board in here to cover those unsightly beams that we're showing in the first version of this bar. And that will also form a nice blend as we stain and make sure everything's flowing. Now, as you can see, too, we have some creases and some spaces in between the fascia board and the shelf. Well, that's a good thing you have. This is why you have a scrap pile. Because I had this board here that I used from a previous project that I have plenty of this standing in my scrap pile. And so that's going to serve as the molding to mold it out and hide those unsightly little misperfections in my cuts. So that's going to be perfect. Now, what I'm stopping here for, as you can see my clamps on here, is that I ran into a problem when I was cutting out the back board and where my original molding was going to be. And because there's a gap here and there was nothing here to attach the molding to here, as well as you see the areas up here. So I had the fashion boards to go in here, which these are brad nailed on and glued, and these are screwed on and glued here. And I'm letting it set now so that all the glue sets before we proceed on putting on the backboard. Also, because I have to change my molding, I'm changing this area here, and I'm going to fashion some pieces to put in here to make sure this is flush all the way through. And then I'm using a flat molding now to sit on top of it. The one thing is so I can have a stopgap, so when you have your wines and beverages in, if someone happens to bump the bar or whatever, you have an actual buffer now that'll stop the wine from sliding all the way out easily. So you have to go in and you have to lift the wine bottles out the way you're supposed to. So that's going to be done up here as well as down here, as well as we're going to have a little lip on the top shelf when we put it on up here as well. So with all that said, when we come back, we'll have all these little areas done, and we're ready to put on the backboard, and then we're going to put on the front board, and then we're going to dry fit the top shelf to measure out, make sure we measure out the size correctly, and then we're going to get the sides cut, put the top shelf on, and then we're going to go into that fun thing of cutting all the molding and putting on the molding. So, catch y'all in a minute. Hey, welcome back, Restorations. And as you can see, we got the bar down on its face now, and we fitted the back panel on. Underneath all the main areas, we have a bead of glue. That is always important when you're putting furniture together. Not just nailing it together or screwing it together, but glue also helps to make sure of everything, make sure everything is fitting tight and nice. We have a couple of areas that we're going to need to sand to make it flush, as well as a couple of areas we're going to have to take the jigsaw out and cut off some additional board to make everything flush, so that when we put the molding on, everything will look neat and flush and perfect for the customer. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the putting on all the brad nails, because that's going to be a nice, long, and tedious process. But as you can see, this is coming out nicely. Look at the wood grain. I mean, this is going to look beautiful. The customer has requested red oak stain, so this is really going to pop when we get this finished. So once we get this done, then we're going to flip it around. We're going to put the front on, then we're going to get the sides on, then we're going to put the top on, and then we're going to start with that fun process of cutting all the molding and then putting all the molding on. So stay tuned, fun has just begun. All right, Restorations, we finished the back, and now we are putting on the front. And I just want you to look at the pretty wood grain that I picked out for the front of this bar. When we put that red oak stain on it, it is going to just pop. Just a few mounting down, get some brad nails put in place. As before, we got all the beams underneath glued, so we're going to have a nice, good, secure fit. And we're going to go ahead and apply this. And then the next thing we're going to do are the sides. And then we're going to get the top on. And then we got to get the base plate done. And then we got to do that molding. So catch y'all in a minute. All right, welcome back, Restorations. And look at this bar. It is 100% better than what we started with. Look at it. We got the full panels on the front, the sides. We've got the bar top on. The only thing left is to do is the trim and to put on the base plate down here. And this bar is going to be ready to be sanded down, stained, aimed. Let's look at the back here. We turn around here and we look at the back. Look how neat and pretty that is. Look at the wood grain patterns that are in the wood. And look at this bar top. I cannot wait to stain this bar top with that wood grain pattern in it. It is going to look so good with that red wood in there. One thing I want to point out when you're doing furniture, and if you're using plyboard or any kind of board, you want to take time to pick it out so that you can get the right good wood grain patterns in it so it makes your project pop. The worst thing you can do is go get a piece of board and just buy a board. And the next thing you know, it has no pattern and it has no pop to it. You're standing and it just looks plain and drab. This is going to scream character all over this entire project. From the back shelving here to the sides, to the front, to the top shelf, it's going to scream character. And then when we put that neutral oh, excuse me, brain freeze, that neutral molding on here that has a little character, but it doesn't have as much character, so it doesn't take away from the board, then this is going to be a really beautiful bar. Man, I almost want to keep this myself. So when we come back, we're going to be doing some finishing touches, and we're going to actually start milling all of our molding and start applying all the molding on, getting the bottom plate on, and then hopefully right after that we get it sanded down, stained, and get it to our customer. So check you guys in a minute. All right, welcome back. And as you can see, we've finished the molding job on this beast of a bar, and it is looking beautiful. We used 3-inch pine molding for the top and the base. We ripped 3/8-inch molding for the sides, and it is looking exquisite. Look at the wood grain patterns in that; those are beautiful. We also used that for the base. And it's more of a rounded molding on this, and that goes all the way around to the other in and around the side, as well as we used it in the back. So let's mosey on around the back, and we'll show you. As you can see, we use the same type of rounded molding to outline all of the openings for the shelves, for the bottom shelf itself. Well, that is looking good. And look, again, I love that wood grain pattern. It is just exquisite. I'm telling you, if you're really going to do good woodwork, take the time to pick out your wood. I think I said it before, but the wood grain patterns are just exquisite. And as we look up, as I lift the camera, you can see that we use the that angled bordering that I had in my wood pile to do the interior molding for the top of the bar. And again, that bar is looking exquisite. What is it? So now all we have to do is do a little sanding, a little patching, if need be. We'll have to see, and get ready to stain. So check you guys in a minute. All right, we're getting ready to sand this bar, and I wanted to go over a few things with you. You've probably seen them on other videos, but I wanted to go over a few things with you guys and make sure that when you're sanding, you're safe when you're doing it. Now, one of the things is you must have a dust mask. In this day and age, everybody should have a dust mask right now, but that protects you from the wood particles that are coming off from the sanders, and that keeps that out of your lungs. Also, you need to have some goggles that helps protect your eyes from those same very wood particles. I like to use a headlamp when I sand, because it illuminates the areas where I'm sanding. I can see into the grains and a little bit more, and it helps me not miss areas while I'm doing sanding, especially projects as large as this. Now, today I'm going to be using my palm sander and my orbital sander. My orbital sander is for the big areas, and my palm sander is for the little areas here. And we're going to start out with 180 grit sandpaper, but to get those dark areas and to smooth out some of those areas that are a little dark and a little rough. And then we're going to follow it up with a 240 grit sandpaper so that we get a nice smooth finish. Now, some of you may use 280, some of you may use 320 to get that good fine finishing sand that you would like. I have found in my travels that 240 works just fine. Sometimes I've used 280 depending on the wood, but being that this is mostly pine, that I'm going to probably get away with 240 very easy. If not, I'll be switching to a 280 to get that even greater finish. So with all that said, let's get to it. All right, now we're back, and this bad boy has been sanded and is buttery smooth. We're now going to get to the home stretch of this project, and that is staining this bad boy and making it beautiful for the customer. Now, our customer has chosen red oak, and we're using Varathane. I hope I said that correctly. And red oak stain, as well as we're using the polyurethanes in semi-gloss, which we'll be doing several coats of that. I also use Minwax. I also use Rust-Oleum stains. I find that all three give you a good finish. It's just, I guess, it's just your taste in what you want. I mean, there are other brands of stain out there as well. Now, we have multiple ways of applying stain, and you see we have using the cloth method, which means you basically take the cloth in your hand and you dip it. And you apply the stain using the cloth. And that's one method of doing it. And I highly advise you to have a rubber glove on if you're doing that, so your hands are not all sticky once you start that process. Another way is using the brush, and that is applying the brush, but you also need to have a cloth behind it. So as you apply it with the brush, and which is generally a little heavier when you use the brush, then you need to have the cloth behind it to wipe the excess off. Now, this may make you apply this stain more, give it another coat, but that's another method of applying stain. The one that I have now chosen a while, and I get these from Home Depot, are these staining sponges. Now, they have the cloth outside, so you get that cloth look, but it also has a sponge inside that helps absorb some of the stain. So when you're staining a project as large as this bar, what you want to do is have long, continuous strokes from one end to the other. You do not want to have short strokes, and then come back and try to do another section, because what will happen is that you will get overlap. And overlap will then give you a darker area in one spot than it is in the other. You do not want that. You want a long, continuous stroke. So the best way to go about doing that is using a staining sponge so that you can get that strong, or using the brush and giving it long, and then wiping it down once you use the cloth. Either way is staining is perfect. It's just your choice on how you want to stain. I prefer the staining sponge. Now, you see this little sanding block here. Now, in between coats, I use the sanding block. This is a 220 good sanding block, and what I do is, when I first stain this entire bar, I'm going to go over and use my fingers over the bar to find any rough spots that's in the stain, because we don't want those when we put the polyurethane on. And I'm going to buff them out with this 220 grit sanding sponge. So it's going to be a light buff. You're not going to stain buff it like you sand it like you were sanding the bar, but you're going to just lightly buff out those areas. Then we apply our polyurethane. Once the polyurethane dries, we will then go back over the bar again with our sanding sponge, and we'll find all the little rust spots, bubbles, and everything in there, sand them out smooth, and then apply our third coat of polyurethane. Hopefully by this point, we've now got all the rough spots, all the little spots that's bubbling up, and we got everything nice and clear. Now, I wanted to stress, and I'll try to show you all the staining process, that on the bar top itself, they will have 3 coats of polyurethane, and that's because we want to make sure it's a little bit more durable, because you're going to have people with glasses and beverages on it, and some people do not know how to use coasters. So we're going to make sure that bar top is more durable and ready for our customers. So with all that said, we're in our last leg here. Come on this journey with me, and let's see what this bad boy looks like once we get this stain on. Check in a minute.
All right, we're back. And didn't I tell you once we put that red oak stain that this bad boy was just going to pop? Look at the wood grains and how beautiful that is in there. And now we're getting ready to put on our first coat of polyurethane. But I wanted to show you 2 things before we started. One is with the sanding sponge. Now, you don't have to do this, but I do it because I like to have my finish as smooth as possible. And that's just rubbing your finger across the grains of what you've done. And once you find a rust spot, you just take the sponge and lightly buff. You don't want to take the stain off. You just want to try to get that as smooth as possible. And most of the time you just wipe it off with your finger. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do this step, but I find that my finishes are a lot smoother when I do it. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you guys is what I talked about before. It's overlap. Now you can really see what that is right here. Now look, you see that? Stand up, you. Now you can really see what that is right here. You see I started with stain here, and then as if imagine if you did a whole section that way, and then you came back and you went to do the next section, and you came over and basically overlapped to make sure you connected with the stain, and you didn't wipe it off. That's overlap. That is a death to a project. That means you end up trying to either matching it, making it darker than you wanted to, or you end up sanding it or stripping it, and then redoing it again. So one of the things I do suggest, whether you're using a cloth to put your stain on, a brush, or the sponge that I use, is that you have your sponge or your application in one hand and a cloth in your other hand. So as you're moving, you're wiping, so that you don't get those overlaps. So when you go for each section, you can wipe and make sure you get that excess off that section, so that you get a nice, clean, and complete stain without this nasty overlap. So I just wanted to show you what overlap is. So we're getting ready to put down the first coat of polyurethane, and then we're going to let it dry. We're going to go over the sanding step again with the sponge like I just stated, and then we're going to apply that second coat. And then after we do that second coat, we're going to apply a third coat to the bar top, and this project is done. So check you in a minute. Well, restorations, we have reached completion, and I must say I'm in love with this bar. Again, with that polyurethane semi-gloss finish over top of that red oak stain, you cannot tell me the wood grains in this bar are not just absolutely gorgeous. Let's take a trip around the back and let's see how everything came out back here. All right. Look, absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous. Look at that. That is a masterpiece. Huh. Let's look at the top. Now, would you want to serve drinks on that top? Well, it's ready to go to the customer. So the next thing is to reveal, and let's see how they like it. See you soon. Hey, welcome back to Restorations. And as you can see, we delivered the bar last night to my cousin and his fiance's home. It looks absolutely wonderful. We're providing pictures so you can see where it sits. They're going to have many years of enjoyment from that bar, as well as we might have a couple of more projects coming from them, so you guys need to stay tuned. We'd like to thank you all for watching this first episode of Restorations. It means a whole lot to us. We hope that you will subscribe. Hope you hit that like button and subscribe so that you can see new videos that we're going to be coming with in the future. And as always, when you see a piece of furniture sitting on the side of the road and you think it can't be repaired, don't you toss it, restore it. Check you guys later. Hey gang, want to give you a restorations note. When you're repairing furniture, and you get a piece of furniture like what we got with the bar, you have to understand that there are different styles of craftsmen out there. You have people who are expert craftsmen who know exactly what they do, and their measurements are down to the T. You have DIYers who do a great job in what they do, and their measurements may be right off maybe 1/8 of an inch, but that's okay. And then you have people like actually built the framework for this bar. Every measurement was off on this bar. I don't know if you guys could tell it, but when we got the bar to almost completion, I was placing the molding on. One opening is larger than the other opening. Another opening is not actually rectangle, it's actually kind of obtuse. One side is higher than the other side. It was a nightmare trying to get the molding to fit these areas. So when you run into a project like that, I want you to, one, be patient, because you now have dealt with something that just put it together mishmash and didn't really pay close attention to the detail of what they were doing. Be patient, take your time, and make sure you do the measurements that you need to do to make sure the project comes out as beautiful as possible. If you do a good job in camouflaging the errors of someone else, no one will ever really be able to tell it unless they have an eye for it. So with that note, y'all have good projects. Check you guys later.